Get up and get out. Get out. Get out.
I have a question for you.
Say Christ is Lord. Say Christ is Lord. Say it. You say Christ is Lord. Get out. Get out. Christ is Lord.
Hello and welcome in to another episode of Offensively Accurate, hosted by yours truly, Atlas Thugged, aka White Boy Deep Voice, aka another racially ambiguous groiper. And yeah, sorry for missing yesterday. Video took a bit longer than I expected it to. It was actually getting ragged by some other things going on too, but here we are. And just a couple of announcements, two announcements actually, and they're both kind of the same thing. The first one is going to be that, well, both of the last two episodes of the Offensively Accurate show are not going to be able to go up on Spotify. One, because they literally deleted it. YouTube just straight up eliminated it. And the other, with James Johnson, the getting involved, I cannot because there's a copyright on the music that was used. So I cannot upload either of those. But as long as it stays unmonetized, the James Johnson one you can find here on YouTube. I do appreciate him coming on. But let's get into some things here. We have a good bit of stuff going on. This is the continuation of the podcast wars or podcaster wars, whatever you would like to call it. And this is kind of a funny kind of evolution in what was the Tucker Carlson and Nick Fuentes kind of the Tucker cost, if you will. And that's kind of ultimately been wrapped up and absorbed into this larger kind of attack, this escalation, this argumentation, and it all kind of revolves around Charlie Kirk. Foreign involvement, and again, probably the more broader picture, which is the complete subversion of America and the just general anger, frustration, pain that most people have with the political system that's not helping anyone. And I think that needs to be said for both sides of the aisle, whether you are a Republican or you're a Democrat, independent, whatever, doesn't matter. The political system's not working for you. And in fact, it's actually getting closer to a lot more of what the left used to call it out for. In the early days of like with Wall Street and such, right? It's a lot of the elites doing whatever they want and everyone else is kind of just being told to F off. So getting into some stuff, we have a good bit to go through. No idea how long this is going to be actually. We're going to react to a good bit of stuff and I'm going to talk some shit about some stuff. Pardon my language. But I made a video yesterday, not going to recap it at all. But I think the point being made in it in the middle of the video, going to the allegations of Nick Fuentes being a Fed. Now that is increasing from what it used to be. And I would say that this newer beef between Ian Carroll and Nick has now kind of escalated these claims a little bit. And I appreciate that. I appreciate that, Mr. Monia. And the reason why is because at the very least, Ian Carroll is at least insinuating that there's a possibility that Nick Fuentes is controlled opposition. And I think at this point, with his most recent response, they're full on open the door to each other. So I watched the entire video of Ian Carroll's, which is one of the shorter videos, actually. It was like a 50-minute video he posted, I believe, either this morning or yesterday morning, kind of going once again, responding to all of what Nick had said. And he even does highlight a little bit of the JF video. And again, this is from the John Francois, however you say that, this French individual who put together probably the most robust, I would say, counterclaim against the kind of current, if you will, the conspiracy against what actually did occur that day. So I appreciate you guys being here. But one thing I wanted to point out with that inside of that element, though, is just the fact that what we have is unfortunately two experts kind of saying the same things, unfortunately. So that's one thing that I think I've not been privy to too much. Ultimately, I've paid attention to a lot more of what, Candace Owens is putting on in terms of these guys, Valhalla VFT. I can't remember the names of some of these other guys, and, who cares really? And there are some flaws in the way that they have done these tests. And I would even wager too, on top of that, I think I said this maybe a couple of days ago, I was more so curious, like, why didn't Candace use Zeb Boykin's video, which was been a lot closer to what we actually witnessed, which would have been, from a further distance. But the one that she plays, obviously, is the one that's from, 20 feet away. And so there's some things that I think Ian didn't talk about in terms of the claims there. Now, he did mention slightly about the tumbling and stuff, but not to get too deep into the actual kind of ballistics with it. I think specifically what was more kind of concerning was that we don't have the official medical report. And all we have actually from that is really just indirect claims that they've seen the report, and it's largely coming from people like Officer Talmud, Brian Harpool, and the other guy's Stephen Gardner. I think there's been other people, but those ones are the ones, I think, the three who have said they've talked to people at TPUSA. And specifically, what they are talking about inside of these claims, and again, we don't have the bullet, and that's where you're getting a lot of this, the C2 to the spine being destroyed, the C2 to the C7, and we don't have the report. So we're really, all of that's just all off of hearsay. And so when you see these claims from like the Hala VFT specifically talking about, well, if they're hitting him in the C2, it would have had to have gone through his teeth. And it's like, well, how about we just like wait till we see the medical report before we just base all of our entire analysis off of like the indirect hearsay from these three TPUSA insiders? And isn't it funny, because isn't the argument that the TPUSA people like can't be trusted? But then we're going to actually completely hold them to their word. Like they're completely 100% accurate. And it's like, listen, bro, like me and my mom have been to the doctor before. There have been times where like, she didn't remember what the doctor had said, or she had she misunderstood. And when she's telling my dad, he's like, my dad's like, whoa, that's actually what happened. It happens all the time. But I would say that's a huge kind of, what would I say? It's a huge kind of gap in this story here, which is, no one's really saying that. They're almost treating all this hearsay as if it is legitimately the medical report, but it's not. It is literally all I've seen, I've heard. And again, Officer Talmud, Stephen Gardner, and Brian Harpool, which Brian Harpool, I believe, is the head, who was the head of security for Charlie Kirk. And so supposedly all these people are untrustworthy when it comes to what they say about the actual medical report. That's 100% guaranteed truth. And I don't mean that to be, I mean it to be pushy, but I mean that to be, I'm overwhelmingly kind of irritated with the, what's the word? The intellectual dishonesty, the overwhelmingly intellectual dishonesty. And so what I mean by that is specifically the Ian Carroll video, the whole video, the entire time. A lot of what I think people's irritation was with Nick Fuentes and maybe other people who have been overtly and outright dismissive of what the theories are. Then Ian Carroll turns around and does the exact same thing to JF's video. And in fact, only watches like one portion of like the Chris Martinson thing. Ian Carroll did not include literally at all any of the ballistics tests from the other random guy that like I literally can't remember his name from, that he actually did shoot with a rangefinder from the distance with ballistic gel that showed that it didn't come out. And so my thing is like, why are we being intellectually dishonest, right? And it is increasingly becoming irritating. And so we're going to get into that because it's on the other side as well, too, with people with TPUSA. Matt Walsh posted a video earlier today, might even actually been like an hour or two ago. I was able to watch a good portion of it. And we'll watch a clip here in a little bit. But he's defending Erica, and it's the most cringe shit I've ever seen. Talking about, like, how hard would it be to acknowledge that Erica Kirk has been performing? How hard would that be? It doesn't mean you need to give her a hard time or say like, wow, that's awful what she's doing, or wow, oh, there's something crazy. You can just acknowledge the performative element, or maybe just being a person who's thrust into the spotlight and is just now behaving weirdly. She's having a strong psychological response. You could give a bunch of excuses, but the idea here is that like, there's nothing to see here. It's just insane. Like that's, and I think Nick even talked about this a little bit too, which was they're losing the, objectively from outside looking in, they're losing the narrative, and part of this is playing into that. The absolute 100% lack of acknowledgement of any of the oddities on their side. And I've said this from the beginning, it makes them look bad. And and I guess again, that's kind of to give a broader, like the intellectual dishonesty is across the board. And I was actually thoroughly disappointed with Ian Carroll. Why he wouldn't have just simply included, I mean, even a portion. He could have just mentioned it slightly. He doesn't, and not at all. There's a whole portion in there. If you guys are with me, there's a whole portion in there of a guy firing downrange. Now, sure, Zeb had points in where he was talking about the ballistic gel being used was too soft. That's fair. At least Zeb was engaging with it. But what I don't like is it's completely devolved into full blown drama. And I'm telling you, Ian, I like you a lot, dude. But you are not going to survive Nick the Knife. I'm telling you that right now. And I don't care about anybody's, this or that, taking sides, this and that. I literally don't care. I swear to God, I don't care. But what I do care about is that we're now, this has now devolved into something so entirely just unmeaningful, unproductive. It just outright, I mean, like it just is awful. And then imagine on top of this all, we're going to attach the fact that we're probably going to lose into the midterms. We're probably going to watch as, I might even vote for them. But the Democrats are, ultimately going to take power. That's what all the predictions are. And I think there's a pretext of censorship coming down the pipe. I think Candace Owens is going to probably be the reason for we might see that. I think even Tucker Carlson, yes, he did. Tucker Carlson and Theo Von talked about this pretext. I think he threw himself in that boat too. But if, say, there is some kind of black swan event, and whether it's fake or not, and they attach it to, well, it was because Candace Owens had convinced me that the government was my enemy, like there could be, along those lines, there could be given a pretext of like, oh, we really have to pack things back down. It looks like, Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson, they were doing too much and they played into the hand of political violence, yada, yada, yada. Not saying it will happen. I'm saying that I think it's plausible. So I'll watch that video too. Hopefully they don't copyright strike me. Tucker's an awful person to try to react to. One other thing that kind of falls outside of the general political spectrum, if you will, is the newly released Divinity trailer. And this goes back into gaming actually a little bit. And I'm only going to talk about it in terms of like what the possible reaction may be. And I'm going to get ahead of it a little bit because I'm sure a lot of people probably haven't seen this. But if you're not familiar, Larian Studios is a gaming studio. They've been out for a hot minute. And they produced some of like the most top rated games like ever. They went from Divinity 1 to Divinity 2 to Baldur's Gate 3, which I would imagine a lot of people are familiar with Baldur's Gate 3. Now this new one is called Divinity. And let's be honest, if you haven't seen the trailer, I'm not going to play the trailer, but the trailer was overtly kind of very aggressive, but it was showing like very hedonistic nature and degeneracy, but not in terms of like promoting it, in terms of like showing it being smited. And so it's like a 3-minute trailer. And Evans Worf, the kind of infamous guy who always is this crazy guy who bots his likes, literally posted and quoted it with a viral post saying, I wonder what the right-wing reaction to this will be. And I am kind of curious with that. Because I'm curious, it could probably go both ways, actually. It showed something very hedonistic, and also on the other end, though, they all getting smited for the way they're behaving. But it was very grotesque and kind of over the top. So I do get people who are probably not into like that kind of gore porn, or whatever you want to call it. But just to give a little pretext warning there too, I would imagine this will start circulating in right-wing spaces before too long, actually. Especially maybe being pushed by Asmongold as well, others like that. So there's a lot to get into. But very shortly, very quickly, let me run through this. Matt Walsh, we're going to cover a bit from him. We're going to cover, obviously, some bit from Nick Poole, Lord forgive me. Yeah, that's a Freudian slip if I've ever heard one. Not Nick Poole, but Nick. We're going to cover the Fed allegations, some a bit of what Tim Poole had said about him. We're also going to go back to what I wanted to cover a few days ago between Joe Budden and Mark Lamont Hill's comments about him. We'll obviously cover Candace. We might cover a little bit of this Sharon Moore as well, because this story is just insane if anybody's seen the Michigan head coach story. We have a bit from Sean Ryan and Dan Crenshaw. Sean Ryan's actually being sued by Dan Crenshaw. And we're also probably going to cover a community submission that came in from House, talking about Andy Ogles wanting to go back to the 1924 Immigration Act and a step away from the 65 Hart-Celler Act. And also beyond there, too, we have some smaller kind of crazy points to be made, because the push for this very extreme pro-Israel sentiment in evangelical spaces has been going strong. And I think that might be something that needs a lot more attention being paid to it. So without further ado, let's get started.
Straight through, offensively accurate, that's the view.
So the first thing that we're going to be taking a look at actually is going to be this clip that we got from Matt Walsh. And so I'll put it up on screen. So what you have here, this is a quote here from Shadow of Ezra. And I think it's only about a 30 or 36 minute video that he put out. I was able to watch like the first 20, and I also caught this clip as well.
And say, she's acting
forgive me.
strange. I've never.
Forgive me. My bad. So he's punched the space bar. And I'm going to be honest. It is, again, it goes back to this kind of a level of intellectual dishonesty. I think with him particularly, it's about Erica Kirk, but he kind of makes this point. He's full on in agreement that it's Tyler Robinson. He even makes a push that he doesn't even think it's allegedly. He thinks there's enough evidence between the confession and the DNA evidence that was found on the rifle itself, that he thinks that that's enough to put him behind bars. He makes an argument, I think, that if it was literally anybody else, that's all that you would ever need. So it is kind of curious, though, because the confession is being contested a little bit, and now pleading not guilty, and not taking any kind of, well, he wouldn't be given a deal anyways, regardless. But I do think there is an element here, though, and I've said this multiple times, that I think the not guilty plea will be an attempt to actually probably latch itself on to a lot of the Candace Owens and Ian Carroll claims, to open up and make a strong push for that there is enough reasonable doubt that Tyler Robinson did not do it. But again, I also caveat that with the fact that, if, I mentioned Johnny Depp and Amber Heard, but like until we actually get to the trial, there's probably a lot of things that no one is even talking about right now that may become a lot more important or a top priority as we get to the trial itself. And so I've always been saying too, like, let's wait. So I still, even right now, feel like very in the dark. And I think Nick's point about a lot of this being circumstantial and there's really no smoking gun, I would say really on either side, I would say that there potentially is, maybe one gets brought out in the trial, but as it sits right now, I do think that we do need to have some reservations until we get there. But the way people are treating this is again, I'm more disappointed in seeing the way people are kind of whinging and letting it dictate their entire lives is been insane to me. But this is Matt Walsh here defending Erica Kirk. And this is what I mean by the intellectual dishonesty. The way that he talks about Erica Kirk, how we should throw our support behind her, while also having literally zero mention of all of the things that people are rightfully pointing out that are giving them weird vibes about what they see on their TV screen. So here it is.
That this is somebody with an immense amount of strength and courage. So when people look at Erica and say, she's acting strange, I've never seen a grieving person act this way. Well, I agree. She's an exceptional person in an extraordinary situation, handling it with remarkable poise and dignity. That is a virtue. And virtue is a strange thing in our day. And even if she were not an impressive person, she would still be a grieving widow. She would still be my friend's wife. And I would still feel duty-bound to support her, as I have over these past 3 months in ways both public and not. So
I'm assuming the argument here is that, like, no matter what she does, it's like, don't really pay attention to it because she's like this amazing. Like, what even is this? And my thing is, like, I'm not like saying like, oh, like digging to her past and all that. I'm talking about when she's doing the thing with like the napkin, right? Like, I think that people are making jokes, right? Like the napkins in the running up for, person of the year, time person of the year, that kind of stuff. And I think one thing that we might not see here on the show today, a clip that's been circulating with, I believe, her sit down with Barry Weiss, where she has like a very Hollywood-esque, when she's telling Candace to stop, right? And like that to me is like, come on, dude. And I agree with Nick. This is part of the reason why women shouldn't be in politics. It's like they're turning it into a performance. The crash shouts with MTG and obviously Candace Owens as well too. We will look a little bit into the social autopsy that Candace Owens put forward. But again, I'm sitting here wondering how hard would that be to make the claim there. And one bit before we get back into the video here with Matt Walsh is what you have now is people are looking back to going to some of the older posts and things that Candace Owens had said previously. I think one in particular was talking about, oh, how dare you make this about you, in response to Nick Fuentes, actually, when he was defending himself against the claims that the Groypers did it. But second to that, she had a video, I believe, early on in this segment where she talks about how, there's one person that could tell her to stop. There's only one person that could tell her that would make her stop. And who was that? It was Erica Kirk. Well, what does Erica Kirk say to Barry Weiss in this interview, this clip? Because I don't think the full thing's been released yet. She says, stop. Is Candace Owens going to stop? No. So this shows a level of like how obviously quickly and personal it has escalated. And even whatever you think about it, anybody and again, all of this is being said too with the fact that there are literal retards who consume and have the ability to go vote too. They have children, they breathe the air just like you and I do. So when they probably see stuff like that from Candace, all it would take is getting one-shotted by a video from Matt Walsh, and they go, Erica Kirk is she is a girl boss. Why is Candace doing this? Because they can only grasp on to concepts for as long as the commentator is speaking into their ear. And it's sad, and I don't mean that to be rude, but like this is literally what we are dealing with. That is why knowing your audience is such a valuable asset, and is becoming increasingly one of the most important things you do need to consider. Whether you're talking just in general to an audience, or whether you're doing you're a politician. We talked a little bit about this with James Johnson, and talking about how your message may differ or may be tweaked depending on who you know is going to be sitting in the crowd there. And part of that's because you know that people are just babies and they'll get offended by the dumbest thing. But thank you for the super chat, Lord of the Rings. He says, worst crisis actor of the year, Erica Kirk. Worst crisis actor of the year. He says, yes, that's a John Ward reference. Interesting. I'm not familiar with the John Ward references. I know the world champion John Ward reference, but the other ones I don't. Maybe I should familiarize myself. But again, let's go back to the Matt Walsh video and see what else he has to say here.
What I am asking everybody, including Candace, is to please leave this woman alone. Let her grieve. Let her pick up the pieces of her shattered life in whatever way she sees fit. She deserves that grace. And we owe it to her, not because of any specific debt, not because we have no right to question her. Of course, we do have the right. But we have a moral obligation as children of our Heavenly Father to be charitable and kind towards suffering widows, especially the widow of a man that all of us on the right say that we respected and admired. All told, the tragedy.
And I will say this. I think this logic just fails in general. I get the point. I get the point of, obviously, like that's why, in the first week, you really just can't say anything, right? Everybody's just got to wait. We got to wait. Obviously, it's tragic. We got to wait till the dust settles for a little bit. You don't want to be the first person who's just screaming off the top, being obnoxious. But are we going to omit the idea that, and again, this is like domestic cases, not in the class of like this political assassination, but isn't the number one suspect in any kind of marital affair the wife or the spouse? Now, granted, this is an entirely different scenario at all, but just saying the general logic applied here would be like the number one suspect in any kind of marital case, regardless of anything, is typically, they always do rope in the spouse. But again, like that applies, just the general logic of that.
The reality is that 3 months after the assassination of Charlie Kirk, the leftists who want us dead are more emboldened than ever. They are thrilled. And that was always the worst possible outcome. It's a trajectory that, if it continues, could destroy not only what Charlie built, but also what's left of the conservative movement. A movement that is the only thing standing between Western civilization and the forces that wish to tear it down brick by brick. That's the reason sociopaths like Tyler Robinson are smiling right now. They know they're winning, and we cannot let them. Which means we all must return to the facts, to the truth, and our defense of it, which is the mission that Charlie lived for and died for. We cannot let it die with him.
Here's the thing, though, is I would heavily disagree actually with Matt on how far we should take Charlie Kirk's mission. But this is what I mean with and again. The one thing that I wanted to highlight there, get back to work, Matt Walsh, is the intellectual dishonesty. It's just and the reason why I highlight this too is because, again, literally it was like the stream that they did, the big stream that they had where like all the people came out, right? Remember like WWE, they were shooting fireworks up, they were selling merch underneath the store, they're registering people up to vote. It was like this big megathon. Even my own mother. This isn't somebody who's, she's tied into she knows what me and my dad might talk about politics, but she tries to avoid it for the most part. She thought Erica Kirk was acting weird. I got a text message from a friend that works and lives out in LA. Literally, because he knows I'm watching this stuff. He messaged me, literally, I think it was that night during the address. This is so cringe and weird, dude. Why is she behaving like this? Why? To me, I struggle to understand why we can't just be honest about these things. What ground are you even going to give people If anything, it would boost your credibility if you were to actually say, yes, I can see where people are saying these things. I totally understand it. I completely get it. You know, maybe somebody needs to tell, like, because think about the napkin thing, for example, right? Like, I've seen a lot of like grieving. I've been around people who have lost people, and that seems to be something that's very performative. Like a one singular item you see all the time, or she's doing it so often. Maybe it's partly because she's constantly wearing makeup. Who knows? But again, just to point these things out. Thank you for the super chat, Cypher. If I can click on it. He says, Candace is emboldened and she is a black woman. Yes. And that seems to be also what's pretty abrasive too, is the idea that there is like this, that's so Raven, or like, you know, this like, you know, badass boss girl energy behind it. And the thing is like, I get all of that truly too. And I don't have any strong maybe opposition against Candace in entirety beyond the fact that she is a woman. I do think that she needs to be a better example for this stuff. I think when you do have people like her and Allie Beth Stuckey, and insert, you know, redheaded libertarian, like all these other girls, they pose a general just subversive threat to like the entire ecosystem, because any girl who has any ounce of an inkling of ambition to do something like that, they're going to point to somebody like that as a reason why they should. And then these are majority coming from these, you know, conservative women. So again, but overall though, the thing is the shit flinging is getting aggressively so. And one thing I'll make mention to too, because this is kind of outside of the, not really outside of the news cycle, but I wasn't expected to be in contact with this individual. But I'm sure he wouldn't mind for me saying it. I might even invite him next week onto the show, depending on what's going on with him. But the individual who you guys might have seen in the video that I posted not too long ago about the Tim Pool shooting, the guy who had called the sheriff's office that Cam Higbee made a video about, saying that he called the wrong sheriff's office. I've been in contact with this guy, and it looks like, seeing how that the pools, or the pool compound or whatever, didn't turn over video evidence to the police. This is kind of like the story's now taken its another step into a weird direction, if you will. Tim Pool, again, I believe, says his defense of it was, forgive me, was he didn't want to, now I don't know if this was not wanting to give it to the police or not wanting to post it online or just post it to post it, but the reason why he said he didn't want to post the footage or to make it public was because it would reveal the locations of where his cameras are at the residence, and then people would be able to plan for things, to be able to look at that video and to know where the cameras are located at. And he thought it was a security risk. And so that, to me, I was just like, okay, maybe. And I think it was Andy No is the one who procured the police report from the sheriff's office that does say, because they did not turn over the video footage and they could not, I believe it literally says verbatim, they could not substantiate that there was a shooting that had occurred, which is crazy. Now, again, you got to go check on that actually, but that story is taking a step in an odd direction. I'll hold my opinion too. Maybe I'll just have Adam on and I'll let him explain it a little bit. I believe that's what his name is, Adam the Angler. And funny enough, guess what? Also, this other viral thing that Adam the Angler was involved with. Do you guys remember the video that came out from Texas where the sheriff's department showed up to a guy's door because he was making posts about Israel? Same guy. It is the same guy. I literally couldn't believe it at first when he sent me the post when he was DMing me. But, you know, check him out, follow him. You know, looks like he's getting involved. He's doing some content creation. I'm not too sure what his background is, but he seems like a friendly guy. And I think the last time I talked to him, he said, I think he's getting ready to do some ballistics range testing with, I believe, like 125, 308 grain to kind of do some more ballistic tests. But again, I'm not an expert on any of that stuff, so I'm hands off on that. I'll only point you to people who I think may have something substantial to acclaim, like JF, or even engage with Ian Carroll. So that's kind of it with the Matt Walsh thing, to get rid of that. But just to say, there's that push there too. And of course, perfect timing, Matt Walsh was on Tucker Carlson, and I didn't watch any of that at all, but it is very curious that the people who find themselves in the media and like in literally the same day news cycle are people who are just on Tucker Carlson. It is wild. just wild. So maybe it's coincidence, maybe it's not, who knows? Who knows? So moving on to Nick. We have this video here from Nick, and I'm going to go ahead and let him make the point first before I lay into it. But I really can't find anything to disagree with this here. So here is this clip from Nick. because this is Nick responding in about a 2-minute clip to the allegations of him being a Fed.
Ethanos sent $30. It's so crazy that you're always looking into Israel and how the Jews are starting to own everything and you preach about that. But all these people want to focus on is for you to say Israel killed Charlie Kirk and they call you a Fed. Okay? So what even if you were a Fed, I still stand with you and your message you preach. Saluting face emoji.
Well, and that's why, you could get into the weeds on the Fed thing, and you can, and there's no evidence for it. But the bigger picture, okay, even if you found that compelling, what would be the goal of the federal government? To red pill everybody about the Jews? I would understand if I was going on the show every day and saying, we need a militia.
Ridiculous.
Like, yeah, that's what a federal agent would do. If I came on the show and said, I'm a Nazi and we need to kill everybody, yeah, that's what a Fed would do. If I got on the show and said, we need to get guns and overthrow the government, but what would be the object of the Feds? To push an extremely nuanced red pill about the Jews? And say, well, I love everybody and I even love Jews and they should be protected. But with that being said, they have too much power because of this ideology they have, and they use it to benefit themselves to the detriment of others. Like, what is the federal government's end game in promoting that? Exactly. Telling young people to go to college and infiltrate the government so that we can be pro-white and critical of Israel. So I don't even understand, finish the sentence for me, finish the theory. So the federal government put me up to do what? Last year, they said the federal government put me up to criticize Trump. Well, I was right about Trump. So what else you got? They're pushing the Democrats. He's criticizing Trump and he doesn't want them. Okay, well, Trump is a train wreck in exactly the way I described, so...
So the point that I made in the video is literally exactly that, which was to give a defense of the Fed allegations, not even looking past anything beyond the last couple of days. And, and I know some people have differing opinions, there's nuanced opinions on this, but I think, the reality here is that there was obviously a huge disappointment, discontentment during this generational run from Nick Fuentes when he gave a contrarian stance to what many people were expecting, got the complete opposite of what they were expecting. But what happened between the initial response from Ian Carroll and then the latest one? Well, he goes on the Piers Morgan show. And what happened on the Piers Morgan show? He gives a robust defense. It was in my opinion, a strong masterclass of how a lot of Gen Zers and just people in general should kind of engage and interact with all the ists and the isms. It was a shot across the bow against the kind of, and isn't Piers Morgan just like a beautiful example of everything that we are fighting against? Just an old boomer who's only concerned about how people feel and don't feel. He gets dog walked by his wife. He's a huge cuck. And he's even really only being humiliated publicly about this because I don't think it was really known what his wife did or who she was until we got to this debate. And then to top everything all off, he's making fun of Nick for not getting laid, but he also calls himself a Catholic. So then he's walking it back today with Steven Crowder, and he's like, well, to be fair, I'm not a devout Catholic. I get it. And it's like, that's the problem. The problem is that we have too many of people like you who say you're a Christian or you call yourselves Catholic or you say you honor God, and it's only ever in the slightest sense where you just kind of nod your head to it, you slightly acknowledge it, and you don't actually walk the walk, you don't talk the talk. I thought that was a masterclass. And so, if the Fed is pushing and priming men to behave that, in that way or promote that, it's okay, I guess I'm with the Fed. And then beyond there, though, and I think more importantly, and I'll make the point again, is what does he make? He has a staple show talking about the bidding war for Warner Bros. Discovery that's happening between Netflix and Paramount. And again, what's funny about this is when I had actually initially read this, I was like, oh, it's going to go hostile. But I hadn't had a chance to talk about it yet. But when you look actually into the bidding details of what is occurring, Netflix put a special thing in the initial agreement that said that they will get $3 billion kickback simply if their offer is not accepted. So they had a strong inclination this was going to be hostile before it even got to the point that we're at. But again, going deeper into that story, what's happening in the story? Nick is he's providing a masterclass from top to bottom, left to right, about how the Ellison's involvement from Larry Ellison to his son David Ellison, the different assets they control, the installment of Barry Weiss, the leverage they have over Donald Trump, the pitch that they will have about making CNN, Trump friendly, explaining how CNN's owned by that. And it's like, so is that what the Fed's promoting? The Fed's promoting someone literally giving a tutorial of like, here's in a real life happening IRL right now in real time example of organized Jewry overtaking a media conglomerate in America. Like to me, it's like you really have to, like, if you're making these full blown, like Nick has got the call, or he has been co-opted, he's here to protect the Jews. It's like, I don't even have a response for that. I mean, like, to me to feel like if you make that allegation or that accusation, to me, it feels like you're only watching clips. You're only watching clips, and you're only watching them because they're being quoted by people who hate Nick. So you're already seeing with some kind of, biased captioning on top of what you're already going to see. So that would be give a short, small defense of just where my head is at on those things. Obviously don't have to disagree, but to me, I feel like that's kind of overtly obvious. In addition to that, though, what's kind of curious is Tim Pool seemingly is like defending Nick a lot more now and nowadays. I won't play this clip, but I will put it up on screen. The Timcast News actually posted this themselves, literally. And I'll zoom it in for you a little bit too. This is from Timcast News themselves, but they say, I don't want Grok to explain this post to you. This is the most annoying push notification of all time. Dude, because I'm trying to take screenshots when I'm making my videos, and that thing pops up. I have to retake it. It's just, it kills me for only 2 seconds, but it's enough to bother me. It's time for Nick Fuentes to get out of Chicago. And the reason why he's saying this, and I believe it was because, was it yesterday or 2 days ago? There was another, I think it's from the Daily Mail, but I believe there's more details coming out about the settlement that Nick is, the settlement agreement about the pepper spray incident that obviously, the infamous pepper spraying incident that Nick Fuentes was involved when that lady came to her home. And Nick basically has like a 4-minute segment talking about how he more than likely needs to get out of Chicago. That is probably not going to get any better, and it's probably going to get worse. And so I just thought that was, in the slightest sense, just kind of funny, because Tim Pool, I in my opinion, I just think Tim is very desperate for credibility. So he will attach his name to anybody that he thinks will help bolster that. I've always had the long held opinion. I think Tim Pool is a very staunch elitist. I do think he is very, very money hungry individual. But just to point that out, thought I was curious. And two, as well, I'm sure you're probably going to have some people from coming out with like Jaden McNeil and others that are just going to ankle bite Nick on the settlement agreement too, but we'll see what happens with that. Here's where I want to go. That's going to be probably the first spicy thing, actually. And this happened, I believe, 2 or 3 days ago. And yes, make sure you do smash the like button. It helps the channel tremendously, and definitely the stream too. Joe Budden and Mark Lamont Hill had a conversation about like who they would platform and how to engage with somebody like Nick Fuentes. And no joke, they literally said, well, we just have to beat them. I kid you not. This is from Red Pill Singing, who clipped it. Mr. Charging, which is a solid clipping account here on X. They do pretty good work. Because it's from Make America Gentile Again. You're going to see the goodest of goys in this individual right here. And again, one of the biggest racial cucks you've probably ever seen in your lifetime. But here we go.
Well, I just wanted to shout out Piers Morgan because of the job he did in the interview.
Did he just cut it off as soon as it started?
No, it was about a 2-hour interview, and he played back all the homeboys' clips for him in case he misspoke or wanted to readdress some things. And it was interesting to listen to. It was.
I don't think we should give those type of people any airtime whatsoever.
Yeah,
I think doing that is giving them gas. Fuck that.
I struggle with it. I see both sides of it. Like putting them on air, because somebody's going to watch that and still get something from it, and it will do more for Nick Fuentes than it will for the enemies of Nick Fuentes. Yeah. But there's also
that's a matter of opinion,
and that's what I'm saying.
That is a matter of opinion.
I think it all comes down to how you engage the person. You know what I mean? You can't normalize the person. I think you got to beat the shit out of them, and if you don't beat the shit out of them, then it doesn't work.
I think it's important.
So what are we doing here? And like, when they tell you this, and understand too, like Mark Lamont Hill is circulated in all these in all these different media circles. I know he regularly goes on Piers Morgan. And the point that I'll just make to this would be very, very simple. There's no more conversation to be had. I would go all the way back and reach into Scott Adams' bag, which is, there's no point. Just stay away from black people. Because the increasingly the people that seem to be propagated, and I'll use Mark Lamont Hill for an example, less so Joe Budden. I think Joe Budden's always kind of been in the same space. But when Mark Lamont Hill is proposed as somebody who's like, he's for free speech and he's someone that, you know, black people need to listen to as like a source of political, whether it's activism or news, etc. And then their way of engaging with Nick is like, well, you can't normalize it. You just have to beat the shit out of him. Okay, well, then there's no conversation here then. They've already determined that anything that Nick would say or any of his arguments, they need to be beaten out of him. And obviously, I think most people probably already understand this on a base level. But when it's being spoken out loud by people like Mark Lamont Hill, I think that's a strong general sign that is probably a lot closer to, and maybe more so, maybe a neutered feeling of how the majority of the black community may feel. And so, again, I thought this was just wild. I didn't see it being played up as much as I definitely thought it should have been. But I thought that was a crazy kind of comment there. And I guess I'll play a little bit afterwards, so I'm not just feeling like I'm clipping out of context here. We just do a little bit. Well, not like that. Lord have mercy. Let's do this.
Important for black people to go in black spaces and tell people who down and who ain't. It's people that have no idea who Homeboy is. I didn't know very much about him.
Me neither.
And with this whole political right-wing upstart young white people that they're trying to just put in political places, it's important to say, hey, this dude's a racist, no denying it. And that's it.
I agree with that. I just think that sometimes it's like, it can backfire and people can take the opinion of, well, he's entitled to believe what he wants to believe. Like that's,
but it's good to see.
This dude is like the definition of like, if you were to look at this facial structure of prey, like what does human prey look like? You know, like stock cattle. That's this dude. And surprisingly enough, he looks literally very similar to, what's that guy's name? Captain Dreamer. But that's it. That's it. That's their position. Anything that's deemed as racist, the answer is to beat the shit out of them. Okay. Right. Like, okay. That's funny. So I just wanted to highlight that. And because I think there is a hard line there inside the black community. And if you caught what he said too, Joe Budden says, you know, black people need to go in black spaces and tell other blacks like, what's up? You know, we need to have a conversation amongst ourselves to determine like who's good with us. Can you imagine if the language was the other way around? White people need to remain in white spaces. We need to figure out like which blacks are good and which blacks aren't. And obviously, I think the implication there is that we're just going to take it, and most people are. So, and again, I do like the implication again as well. And it's funny because I didn't think about it at the time, but this was something that literally Chuck Mason did to me in our debate over Israeli involvement in the co-opting of Israeli influence over Americans' interest. And when I was specifically talking about the founding of Israel, what does he bring up in comparison? Well, he brings up, to almost justify it, he brings up the Native Americans. And again, like, and I think Nick nails it, which is, so the implication there is that like, we should just take it. Well, you know, these things have happened before, so what are you going to do about it? Just let them kill and destroy you and go extinct. And it's like, yeah. Tell me right now, that's what you would tell a Native American person, that they just, well, you know, it's happened before, just sit there. Obviously not. They would only say it to white people if it's happening. You know, if you were to go to a black village that was being genocided, they'd be like, oh my God, this is the worst thing ever. Curious the way they would defend. People show a lot when they pull wild examples out of their ass for things like that. We did talk a little bit about the bidding war. I don't think I need to go into too much more detail with that. I think Nick did a fantastic job covering it. What we will do though is I think this is another segment that I didn't think got much play. Was Brent Cooper literally also got grilled and was made to answer for Nick Fuentes, or really more so was kind of just pressed. I would say not it wasn't hostile, but it certainly wasn't friendly either. And I believe it was from NPR. So we have this video here, and again, another one that I didn't think went very viral, but I was impressed with Brett Cooper's answer, and Brett Cooper Groyper continues to be a success, it seems. So here we are, and this is, I forget who this individual is, but I do believe he literally is from some kind of a Christian organization. I'm trying to remember exactly where I remember him from. Maybe his credentials will pop up in the video, actually. But here we go.
Let's take for granted as part of this conversation that people have a right to say what they want to say.
Yes.
There is then the matter of what Nick Fuentes and some other people have said. Fuentes, this is a quote from a video in an interview with Alex Jones. Jewish elite gangsters that run our country. And in the Tucker Carlson interview, he talks about how he feels that Jews are extremely organized across borders and more loyal to Israel than to their home countries, which is a longtime anti-Semitic kind of idea. When we get down to the substance of what Nick Fuentes says, do you agree with it?
You know, I don't agree with Nick Fuentes on everything. I don't agree with anybody on everything. I think that what especially older generations need to learn about Nick Fuentes is that he says it himself, he's an edgelord. He says things that are intentionally inflammatory. He knows that a lot of people are not going to agree with him. He knows that it is incredibly inflammatory. And honestly, I don't pay much attention to it.
Do you think that Jewish gangsters are controlling the country?
No, not really. I am concerned about the impact of Israel in our country. I think that a lot of young people are, and I'm concerned about it in the way of, young people's biggest concern right now on both sides of the aisle is the economy. We are concerned about being able to buy homes. We are concerned about affordability. And so when we see the news, when we see how much money is being sent overseas to Ukraine, to Israel, whatever it may be, my generation is concerned. We are upset. It's not because of anti-Semitism. It is not because we, dislike people because of their race or their beliefs or their creed. It is simply like, this is what we're focusing on. Like, at the end of the day, I think I and so much of my generation is just tired of it. Like, I want to focus on American issues. And so when we spend all day talking and bickering about, foreign affairs and where all the money is going, it's like, I want to get back to how are we going to make life affordable for my generation? And if you're going to be focusing on what's going on overseas and making that your big priority, like, I honestly, to be totally transparent, and I think most of my generation would agree, I don't care. And so as a result, I don't pay much attention to it. I direct my attention to American issues, to positive things. I amplify voices that I believe are good and truthful and wholesome. And that is what I focus on.
So, well, I'll say this too. Like, I think if you were expecting her to say, yes, I do, to him asking, do you think America's ruled by Jewish gangsters? Like, come on, like, Brett Cooper was not ever going to say that. But I was still impressed with their answer. I thought that was good because it still highlighted Israel and went into a bit maybe more of a nuanced position. And I think it's good. I think that's somebody that you would, especially in this kind of political climate, like, who else would you team up with? Who else would be an ally? But again, Brett Cooper being a woman, I don't think that she should be in this political space. But we have to be pragmatic, I guess. Then, as always, right, you can only deal with what the chess pieces are on the board. I can't just generate some random person that doesn't exist. That'll be magically based as well. But somebody said it earlier, right? The boomers are still pulling up these quotes and expecting people to go, the horror. It's not how we operate anymore. You want me to react to a quote when, like, we're actively being genocided? You want me to have any ounce of reaction literally at all when, like, my entire life I've literally been berated with psychological propaganda about interracial, like, fucking and fetishes and stuff? And forgive the French, but, like, this is the point here. And yeah, none of us, we're also desensitized to anything at this point from what's been happening to us. Like, future, what future? Hey, you can have your first home if you can live to the ripe age of 61 years old. You know what? Here's a better idea. Dude, I saw this thing from a guy. A guy applied to 1 million jobs. Okay, 1 million jobs. He got back, he received the response to, I believe, like 4,000 of them. No, it's like 2,000 of them. And he got an offer from like 3 of them, right? So we're going back to the Business Insider report that was like applying to a job in 2025 is the statistical equivalent of like just hurling something into a black hole. Like, and they don't care. They don't care. There's no solution on the table that's going to help. Mass deportations would have been the one, but it's what we're not getting. And what we are getting is golden tickets. You can buy American citizenship. Beautiful. This is beautiful, and I think this is even more outlined with the Piers Morgan thing, right? Me mom, me dad. Who are you? And I'm supposed. You want me to care about you? No. You don't care about me. You care that I might have offended you from across the pond, and we're in a whole different country. Talk about having your priorities not in order, right? And the whole idea is like, and it's, I like the way that he put it too, which is like, it's more of like this kind of superfluous thing. It's like, no one's really thinking about it. The Hitler edits are one thing, but it's not like there's all these constant active conversations about it. Now there are in some spaces, I guess, if you get closer to like the JQ radio and stuff like that. But for the most part, there's people bringing up like the desire for someone to save them, the desire for someone to come in and give a solution. And it's maybe more so what you see with Hitler. It's like, Hitler, can you hear me? Right? Like that's kind of the general pull there, and they can't do it. They can't even engage with it. And part of it is because of the post-war consensus, and with that you get the religious dogma that is the Holocaust. That it is, you can. It's crazy to think that you have more. You will be celebrated if you were to deny Jesus Christ by some people in this country. You will more than likely be jailed and have your character assassinated. Well, less so jailed in America, but you will have your character assassinated if you deny the Holocaust. So, what rules this country? Well, something definitely has more power than Jesus' name, and it shouldn't be like this at all. And I think this more so defines that in the culture element too. Like, we want our country back more so than we really care about the economy. And like, you could keep Columbus as it is. I would move back, just get all of the people who came from the third world and all of the people who are unwilling to assimilate to American values out, and put the people in prison who should be there. But again, preaching to the choir, I would imagine, for the most part. So moving on from here, that's kind of going to cover it for where we are at with Nick. I think Nick's probably going to have a bit more of a response to Ian Carroll. I know that's kind of where it's went a little bit. I think where it's at now is it's just evolving into drama, and I don't care. Like I care in terms of like paying attention to it and knowing like what's being said, but like what I would really like, I mean, do you want me to be honest? I would really like if somebody just went up in public and started berating women in public spaces. Not like just going out to get a drink of water. I'm talking like Allie Beth Stuckey's, all that. Like, I would like to see a real push against the woman question. I am certainly of the mindset as of right now that women are the most protected asset in the whole world. And not in the way that they should be. In the way that propagates this fifth wave feminism and the simp industrial complex. That, dude, it's aggressive, honestly. But moving on, though, I wanted to highlight this, actually. So we have two things. So now we're switching gears. We're going over to Candace Owens. So two things from Candace Owens that I found that were particularly interesting was one came from Milk Bar TV, and I think I might try to do a bit more digging into this and maybe make a show about it or a video about it, diving deeper into Candace's background. But this is one that's going to explore her website called The Social Autopsy. And Social Autopsy was literally a doxing site, kind of like an archive basically for, screen grabs from, that way you could see somebody's social media background. But without further ado, I'll go ahead and let the video kind of explain it. You go ahead and grab this here. And it's from Milk Bar TV. I think the guy's real name is Nathan Livingstone. I don't know too much about him, so again, take it with a grain of salt on what they're political. It's not an endorsement by any means, but here it is.
Hey guys, it is Candace Owens, the founder of socialautopsy.com. There are literally thousands of instances of hate speech being circulated online. The age of technology and social media has slowly disintegrated individual accountability, the consequences of which are devastating. Introducing Social Autopsy, the first ever search database that compiles and allows the public to easily access the digital footprint of individuals and companies. Our team has crawled through the public interfaces of Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, creating real profiles for the individuals that lob hate speech over the web. These individuals are your teachers, doctors, neighbors, and business owners, and for the first time ever, you'll be given the chance to run a real background check on them to see what these people represent behind closed doors. Let me show you how it works. Plug in the name of any person, company, or organization. Our database will return any number of profile hits, which can then be narrowed down by city and state. When you've located a user, you will be brought to their autopsy report, which will consist of real screenshots of words that they have shared across social media platforms. Have someone that you'd like to add to our morgue? Submit them. Our database is continually grown by anonymous submissions from individuals like you. Because why engage in an online back-forth argument with friends over insulting statuses and comments when you can instead screenshot their harsh words and privately submit them to our database? We exist as a clean archive of an individual's words only, from which employers, friends, and universities alike may draw their own conclusions. What about minors? We are seeing a lot of people that are showing concern for minors. We stand by the fact that we think the best time to be on our database is when you are a minor, because that's exactly what we're trying to do. We are trying to affect their, conscience when they're young, so they know to use the internet more responsibly when they're older.
And I'll pause it here too. I know we're getting close to the end, and that's why I wanted to do this. I think a lot of people probably may not be at all familiar with a lot of what her background is. And specifically, now I'm probably going to butcher some of the details, but as far as I understand, one of the first things that really got her, especially like some good amount of money, was an initial kind of, I don't know what kind of case it would fall under, but she basically cried racism. And I think she had a successful lawsuit against, I don't know if it was an individual or if it was an institution, but she did have a successful lawsuit. And actually, if you dig a little bit deeper into it, she also has like previous lawsuits as well. One that she had against like an apartment complex that like she lost and had to pay out like 20 grand. So she clearly has a very checkered past. And I think, again, who doesn't in the political space who makes it to the mainstream like that? Maybe that's the only people they allow to make it that far, to be honest. But clearly there are some questions behind Candace that do need to be answered.
There's no harm, no foul, really, if you're a minor, right? You have this profile for 365 days. You're not applying to college. You're not, going out for a job. It doesn't do anything to affect your livelihood in any way. So we think that that's really honestly the best time for people to learn. How long do profiles last? Good question. Profiles last for 365 days. After a 1-year span, if the user that has been submitted hasn't done anything else, hasn't really said anything that's bad, we totally believe in forgiveness and second chances, and we will drop their name from our database forever. Simply put, Social Autopsy.
So you say you could pay?
In 65 days. After a 1-year span, if the user that has been submitted hasn't done anything else, hasn't really said anything that's bad, we totally believe in forgiveness and second chance.
Yeah, I don't buy that. Wow. Wow. Yeah, that's crazy. And that's just like one of these things, right? I think there's a number of things that would need to be explored. And maybe that's what I could honestly make a video about, is exploring all the different claims against her, taking a look into her background, doing a bit of an expose. And I quite certainly do think that that's ultimately what Nick will probably do, coming closer to December 15th. I think he's already threatened it a couple times. And, here we are again with Nick the Knife. Can't spell social without CIA. True. Very true. The next thing I wanted to highlight, though, and so just to give you a piece, I think that's very important. She had an appearance with Jimmy Dore. And Jimmy Dore, and if we're looking at where the podcast wars are at, Jimmy Dore is very, very heavily aligning himself with Candace Owens. And this clip was just it just gave me weird vibes. I'll say that. Now, it was clipped by Project Constitution. And you'll probably see what I mean as we get into this a little bit. But I will say what's funny is the fact that I think some people, and I think it might even been House who highlighted this. I don't know if it was House who sent this article or if it was somebody else in the Discord who had sent this to me. And so if I'm forgetting who it was, I apologize. But they were highlighting how when QAnon was like the hottest like theory, and it was on the market and it was being pushed and promoted, that it had basically free reign on YouTube. That a lot of it was being promoted, and it was showing a lot of these like side by side numbers of like QAnon content going on. And I think now a lot of people are now also making this point too, which is, you know, wouldn't that be the thought, would be that like they would increasingly try to find a way to get Candace off the platform, you know, or trying to, if the theory really is there's this insane level of influence. Now, I do also get the argument that then it would also make it too obvious for her to just like outright be, you know, disappeared off of the platform. But I do think there is just an oddity there with how it's being promoted. And also the fact too of like, I'm not really seeing anything from the other way around, but supposedly there's a lot more. So I'm going to try to find one of the older JF videos and see it, because apparently he had one where he went through like a couple of different ones of these different ballistic tests that are like a lot more accurate to the actual circumstance than what you're getting from like Valhalla VFT and others. So as long as I can get some time, it's looking like I'm getting ragged by my family. It's like, I think I might agree with Nick on that. I think the worst thing about, no, I'm just kidding, not the worst thing at all. But it obviously does make it a lot harder to sit and focus for long periods of time listening to things. Instead of being called out, hey, can you come help me? You need to come look at your daughter. Come look at what your daughter's doing right now. And I enjoy it, obviously. But let's look at and listen to a little bit of this from Jimmy Dore and Candace Owens.
Your mandated anti-Candace videos, because I was realizing that your show wasn't doing that. So I just wanted to see what was going wrong. You know, I didn't want to send people over to see what was happening on the show, since every other commentator in the world has done some anti-Candace content. So I'm here to help you do that.
Well, yeah, I mean, we have a couple in the can. I'm just waiting for the go ahead from Benjamin Netanyahu. I haven't gotten it yet. And I'm waiting for at least one $7,000 check. I haven't gotten that either. So, but when that happens, believe me, you're going right under the bus. And,
okay, great. I wanted to make sure.
Because you are a scumbag. And
demonic, evil, scumbag.
I guess my first question would be, why don't you care about the midterms?
You cannot make it up. You cannot make up the commentary. Tim Pool was just really something. It's like, why are Republicans focused on public executions of Republicans? I don't understand. Don't you understand that your job is to vote and to make sure the same people that are engaged in covering up and selling you absolute crap about what happened on that day still need to be in office?
So I just overtly was just like, I don't know. I just, the vibes I was getting from that was just felt a little off. Just like the energy there. Now, again, Jimmy Dore, I think, has been pretty good on things like COVID and such as well, too. But I think even, and I would agree with the point they were going there that I don't know if they're going to dive much deeper into. And I think even Zeb would agree with me on this, too. The idea that they're going to even attempt to try to lay the midterm collapse or the Republican loss of the midterms at the feet of Candace Owens is retarded. Absolutely retarded. Dude, I like that. When I was seeing that being pushed by people and like some prominent people as well, it made me about want to run through a wall. And part of this is because this has kind of been where my wheelhouse on a lot of the stuff I talk about politically, which was early on noticing there was the massive gap building, and especially more so the longer they were doing the big tent conservatism. And I know I've preaching to the choir with you guys. I've said it about 1 million times, but maybe this is going to be partially like an element combined with what I meant earlier with the pretext of censorship, which is they'll in tandem also say, well, look, not only did what Candace Owens say, if there, and again, attach this if there's a black swan event or a false flag event or any kind of, incident, and they'll say, they're going to be like, wow, what did this person listen to? Candace Owens. They were like really heavy into Candace Owens, and you're going to lose the midterms. They're going to look at that in tandem, and Republicans are going to pony up and say, man, not only did all this awful stuff happen with Charlie Kirk and all this, but also we lost the midterms because we didn't have any strong checks and balances for people like Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson. I can see it. I can see that. I can see it clear as day as a pretext to censor or at least strengthen what level of these restrictions are, maybe to institute some other kind of extra laws or defamation suits, things like that. Let me go back up here though. And because I agree completely. The only person that is at fault of midterms is Trump. And I entirely agree. And I would even add additionally just the entire Trump administration. I would actually even say I think his administration lost it more than everyone else. I would say Kash Patel and Pam Bondi, I would argue, are like the top two. They tag team that. Hard to pick an MVP between those two. Cowpoke97, thank you for the super chat, brother. He says that Jimmy Dore is the one who started my left-wing populist transformation over the last 10 years. It's been a really slow process, but I owe him one. And I hear you. I have a friend from college who actually is a content creator now too. I won't blast him at all because I don't want him to be attached to me. I know I'm probably going to be toxic. But he does a lot of like sports stuff, and he politically listened to Jimmy Dore a bunch. And when I was seeing some of the political stuff coming out from Jimmy Dore during the COVID era, I was like, that's good. I was like, that's good. At least I know my one friend is listening to somebody who is not, in complete lockstep with, the ongoings of the progressive administration or the progressives at large. And yeah, completely agree. And who knows what else will lose beyond just the midterms too. But and actually, I think maybe this is a great point and segue to go to there actually. And again, I don't want to spend too much time on drama at all. But just to say, if you do find that clip or you listen to that episode, I found it to be just maybe a little bit too over the top, a little bit of showboating, if you will. But I want to show you this. I please don't tell me I have this because this is from, where's the administration at? I had this. I'm going to find this. Don't worry. Give me 1 second. I have to find this. Should be here. You know what we're going to do? I got to look through my bookmarks real quick. It has to be in here. There it is. I don't know why it wasn't showing up. Okay, apologies. On that note, on the note of, we're just going to skip forward to this. I apologize. On the note of losing the midterms, showing up to vote, the lack of feeling good about what's happening. I mean, you guys have probably seen the memes now of the Trump administration, right? It's the one where Trump's mean mugging, and he's looking down, and the caption's like the Elden Ring. It's like, we are going to fucking do nothing. I've seen that everywhere. It's a great meme, dude. Love it. Whoever made that, dude, A1. Newsmax's Carl Higbee came out and basically said a lot of what I've said for the last 3 weeks, wrapped it all together and just ripped into the administration. It was fantastic. So I don't know too much about Carl Higbee at all. And it's not spelled like Cam Higbee. That matters. And but he's from Newsmax, and he goes hard on the question of why show up to vote. Now, I wasn't expecting this, but it looks like Newsmax is increasingly positioning themselves. They're outflanking almost every news organization to the right, and I love it. But here it is.
Everyone's like, oh, this is the most important election. No, the most important election of our lifetimes from here on out is the next one. Okay. And then the one after that. And then the one after that. And if Republicans don't make these things into law and get this through their head, they're going to lose. And Republicans are going to sit there in the minority scratching their head. I don't understand why we didn't have turnout. The better question is, Mike Johnson, why would we show up to vote? You haven't thrown a single person in jail. There's no accountability for COVID, and New York Dems ran the guy who literally stuffed elderly patients into retirement homes with COVID and killed people. They blocked meds that would have saved lives. They shut down schools. They forced people to get a vaccine against their will, who then got heart conditions and nothing happened. And they lied about it, coming from some dude that it was in he ate a bat in a wet market while Fauci and his cabal were killing beagles and funding the Wuhan coronavirus lab and expected us to believe that it didn't come from a lab in Wuhan named coronavirus. No one in jail for Russiagate, for censorship. Not one of the 51 former Intel officials who told us that Hunter Biden's laptop was a Russian plant. It actually does turn out that Hunter Biden was, in fact, smoking crack in bathtubs with hookers. You failed to indict Letitia James for like the third time today because you did it wrong the first time. Still haven't charged Adam Schiff for the same mortgage fraud. Looks like James Comey is probably going to get off scot-free. And the best the Republicans can do is, here's $800 million more for Ukraine. Why the hell would Republicans be excited to vote if Trump's not on the ballot? You want to keep your majority? Throw 100 people in jail for political corruption and all the corruption that Doge uncovered. None of those people are in jail. That's like low-hanging fruit, including everybody involved with the auto pen primary, all the 21 state senators in Indiana who just voted with Democrats to oppose congressional redistricting for their own party. They essentially just gave up 2 seats. Abolish the filibuster and just start getting stuff done. Give us nationwide reciprocity. Abolish the income tax. But while you're at it, let's deep six the IRS. And then you can sell the building or drone strike it or do whatever you want so nobody can come back to it. And then you can tell the Muslims seeking refugee status to do it in the 56 surrounding Muslim countries that they have rather than here so we don't have to pay their benefits. You do that, you'll gain seats in the House. We'll have 300-seat majority. People like me will be excited to go out and vote because we're not right now. Because if you do that stuff, man, Mike, I'm telling you, I will legit run through a wall like the Kool-Aid dude to get to the polls. But if you don't, you'll lose.
Dude, I was, you know, if you guys remember that meme of Lil Wayne, where he's like, woo, woo, like that was me watching that. I want to know more about this guy. This is what we've been saying. This is what I have been saying. Is what a lot of people have been saying. You don't have to worry. You literally just won the election. There's really not much campaigning that you need to do as long as you are doing the things that you said that you were going to do. So the problem who's losing now is you. So what changed? How did you go from winning the country in both the in the general vote, but also in the electoral, and now we're massively losing the midterms, and the poly market showing like we're going to get our cheeks clapped here in a year. It's you. Actually, the problem is you. The problem is not Candace Owens. The problem is the fact that you have not at all even began to take mass deportation seriously. You're doing everything else beyond that to do it peripherally. You are going back and forth. It's a Democrat hoax. The Epstein files is a continually fumbling ball. You're doing all of these kind of publicity stunts. You're having the worst people going up and dancing. Well, they didn't dance. That was AI, but it was so realistic. That might as well be real. That's the point. I want to respond to this one up here. I caught this one from Jay Banks, who says, Atlas, I do think that Nick's argument that a Fed wouldn't expose Jewry while simultaneously telling people to not hate all Jews is off. That is what a Fed would do. It's kosher anti-Semitism. Well, the thing is like we're not. So as a Christian, we're not supposed to hate anybody at all, right? We're supposed to hate evil. And so the point I would make to this, we'll keep it on screen so people know what I'm responding to. Here would be my counterpoint, actually, and I would say it's the inverse of what you're saying. Candace Owens, Tucker Carlson, and Ian Carroll are known, very publicly so, I would add. Add in also, I believe, maybe Clint Russell less so. But I would also throw in there Dave Smith. The number one reason that we have been so oppositional to them, from the Groypers perspective, is the fact that they refuse to attach a Jewish identity to any of the pattern of behaviors. They say quite actually, there's nothing about Jewish identity that actually involves this. It's the nation of Israel. It's the people involved with Israel. It's the Frankist. It's the whatever. But Nick's argument of like, we're supposed to love everybody, like that is true, right? Like that is like that's the Christian position. We are to love everybody. We are to forgive our enemies, even those who actively work to attack us. It's like the whole point, actually. And so I think that some people kind of miss this, right? Or maybe they're not familiar with the fact that Nick is a very ardent Christian, right? He's a very, I would say Christian supremacist, and so am I. And so I think that the idea that because they don't hate them, that's not the goal. The goal is to point people to the idea that, like race realism with black people, that also other ethnicities, it's not just blacks, dude. Whites have different things too. It's just to point out that the races all have in-group preferences. They all have patterns of behavior that can be seen. And in additionally to that, there are literal genetic differences between the people. So much so that I would argue back to somebody that it's not good enough that you can recognize that a man's a man and a woman's a woman. You must also recognize, like, people attack the pro-trans crowd all the time. Like, it's such a ridiculous thing to believe a man could be a woman. And I would argue the same thing's true. A white man can't be a black man can't be a white man, and there are differences there, and we need to recognize them. There are distinctions there. That's, I think, maybe the more full-fledged position there. But I appreciate the comment, though, man. I appreciate anybody's comment, as long as you're not being, I guess, insane. But that was a great thing from Carl Higbee there. They're from Newsmax, and I think that was where Matt Gaetz was, or maybe he still is. I thought Matt Gaetz might be with somebody like random that I'm not thinking of, like Right Ankle News or somebody like that. I'm not sure. But that was, I guess, kind of maybe wrap up where we're at with the Candace and Nick stuff here too. We have a good bit about the kind of the pro TPUSA, the Israeli involvement as well. But we also will go to this Theo Von and Tucker Carlson while we're staying on this idea that there may be a potential kind of pretext for censorship. And I was kind of curious because Theo Von and Tucker did talk about it. Now, this clip here is from the Vigilant Fox, who's all right. I'm not gonna go much further than that. They're all right. But here's this video. It's a short one. It's like a minute and a half long. And they are talking about, what would it take to get them off of YouTube, essentially?
The problem is going to be YouTube. Oh, does YouTube stay open or not? I think. I mean, that's the vector. Candace Owens is like the most famous person in the world because of YouTube.
Yeah.
YouTube is the backbone of all of this stuff. And if there is some, God hope it doesn't happen, but if there's some act of violence in the United States that can be used as a pretext in the same way that January 6th was used as a pretext to shut down all these people, they'll kick people off. My fear is that there will be a crackdown on YouTube. And at that point, that would be a true disaster for the country.
If they kick people off of YouTube?
I think.
Oh, yeah. I agree.
So if there's an act of violence, whether it's organic or not, because some of them are not organic, sorry, that's a fact, a proven fact. But whatever the cause of it, if there's an act of violence against innocents and it's described as a hate crime, that it's not crazy to imagine that could be used to tie people whose opinions are unpopular with certain groups. Those people need to be off YouTube. And all of a sudden there's an emergency meeting with Sundar Pichai at Google. And it's like, I'm sorry, you cannot have purveyors of hate like Candace Owens and me or you. You can't have them. These people died because these podcasters said hateful things. You have to take them off.
So he's obviously open to the idea. I would imagine you would have to be, especially if you know the plans. I mean, he's there on the back end. Who knows what Tucker's the deal is? Who knows what faction he works for? But I do think that more than likely is a very strong possibility. And I think that this was even something that was being floated out by, remember, even in the early initial periods with Charlie Kirk. I can't remember people specifically off the top of my head, but I do remember there were people calling for censorship and consequences for speech, for things that they were saying about, Kirk post-assassination and like the celebrations of such as well too. And so there for a short period of time and like the hot moment right after when the momentum is high, people want action against what had occurred there. They want their enemies to face justice. They had Republicans willing to say they will, they revoke people's ability to speak freely. Right. And this was kind of garnered, I think, even from Candace Owens. Maybe it wasn't Candace. I think it was Candace. Maybe I'm confusing it with somebody else, but at least there was somebody who was kind of organizing. It was Asmongold. That's what it was. Asmongold he was rotating like this kind of list where people could submit different like TikToks and stuff. And what they would do is they would call these people's place of work. And they would say, do you know that your employer or whatever had done this? And so they were getting people actively fired. And which was, again, they were just copying what the left has been doing for a long, long time. So it kind of just showed that the right was willing to step down to the level of tactics the left is doing. And I think partially that's what's required when you're playing against a cheater, especially if you are, and again, right? Like if someone's coming for you and your family and your kids, I think there's very little that you're going to think about what is the right way to do something before you defend your family. So again, I think in the way too, also the defense of a nation as well needs to be viewed in that sense too. So will we get some censorship? More than likely, and it's already happening. And I would expect it to continue to happen. And it's unfortunate. Another smaller thing, though, as we continue to kind of segue away from these stories, I probably won't play the video at all. But there's a story now going out because Sean Ryan made a video earlier today that Sean Ryan is being sued by Dan Crenshaw for comments that he made, like the smallest, slightest offhand comments that he had made about Dan Crenshaw. And this was about how Dan Crenshaw's, net wealth or net worth, I should say. How did he enrich himself? They were kind of like some slight underhanded comments. And so I don't really care too much about those two guys, but just to say that is a news story here. So Sean Ryan is being sued by Dan, and I think he did say in his video he will be opposing it. He will take it on. So who knows what's coming with that? This is a good one, and this is one that I really wanted to cover before the stream got taken down a couple of days ago when YouTube used AI to F me over and bend me over for no reason. And that appeal did get rejected, by the way. I don't know if I told people that or not, but it did get rejected. YouTube, man. Is this video from Andrew Colvett. And it's not just Andrew Colvett, it's the conversation that he's having with, I don't remember the guy's name, but he's having a conversation with somebody who's from the Christian Broadcasting Network. And what would you expect somebody from the Christian Broadcasting Network would be talking about? Christianity, right, exactly. Well, that's not what they were talking about. They were talking about Israel and anti-Semitism. Wow. And I think this conversation, it's a little bit longer. I might not play the whole thing. I think it happens about the 2-minute mark. It perfectly exhibits this idea of what it means to that it's either that this is the dichotomy. Are we going to support Israel a lot, or are we only going to support Israel in certain areas? Coming in with the premise that not supporting Israel is like not even on the table. And this conversation, I think, is great because it's from somebody who's a very staunch Zionist, like somebody who's probably a bit more back end from the Christian Broadcasting Network, having a conversation with a forward-facing person who continually gets crap for the Israel position. So it's kind of like somebody who's wanting to be less so promoting of everything, and someone who wants it to be 100% alignment. So here we are. Let me switch this over here for you. And again, Andrew Colvett, and I cannot remember this guy's name, but he's from the Christian Broadcasting Network. You see this here.
What's your sense of it? Because we've seen a shift.
Absolutely. We've seen a shift. I mean, and there are going to be some immovables here, right? Non-negotiables.
What are those?
That Israel has a right to exist, that it has a right to defend itself, that we fully reject hatred of Jewish people, anti-Semitism, all that stuff. Because I think there has to be definitive lines. Now, when it comes to how much we should fund Israel, should the status quo, the foreign policy status quo, be continued? Should it be altered? Those kinds of things are worthwhile debates to have.
See, so I was wrong. Apparently this is it's just the start of the clip. He just opens with it. We have to set some lines. These are some things that you can't argue with no matter what. Israel has a right to exist. They have a right to defend themselves. And so all of that obviously doesn't mean exactly what he's saying. It means what they have attached that language, that rhetoric to their actual actions. And so are they actually defending themselves, or are they carrying out a genocide, right? It's like, but what they're leading in, and Andrew Colvett is saying is, well, here's the line. The line is that, you have to say that Israel is a nation and it needs to exist, and they're allowed to defend itself. Like you have to accept the base premise that everyone wants to attack Israel, and that all these base premises. And we're saying, no, we are rejecting almost all of those base premises. But here you are. Here is supposedly what I would imagine is probably going to be in the upcoming couple of years becoming what will be the face of TPUSA with Andrew Colvett. But who knows? He may step down. And one of the top guys at the Christian Broadcasting Network. And what are they doing? They are outlining to you as conservatives, like, what's the right way to handle? Is it between? And again, like I said earlier, is it between 100% support? Or are there questions we can ask about the funding in different elements? As Andrew Colvett says right there. It's just such a joke. Thank you again, brother, for the super chat. Lord of the Reese says, America has a right to exist. America has a right to defend itself. And I cannot remember who had said this. And it might even been Lord of the Ree. But whoever mentioned that we need to start actually adopting the language of the Israel lobby. We have to. White Christian Americans have a right to defend themselves. White Christian Americans have a right to exist. White Christian Americans have the right to self-determination. Like all of those things. Let's just adopt the language. You want to play this bullshit semantic game where you're going to try to continually co-opt us all out of our own interests under the guise that it would be morally reprehensible to do anything other than get on your knees for Jewish people. Okay, fuck you. Let's do the opposite. Let's actually adopt everything that you guys have done, every single one of your underhanded and sly and slimy tactics. Let's grease our palms and let's do exactly what you're doing. Let's play the game. You brought it here. We'll take it up the next level. Let's see what happens when we have two parallel groups arguing the same things, wondering how they're both acting they can for their own self-defense, but they're both being, or really one is being attacked. I'm so tired of it. Combine the intellectual dishonesty with the fact that you have a majority of a lot of these conservatives just continually pushing for the Christian Zionism and to push away. I'm so done with it. I'm so done with it. And I'm so done with having to dance around all these stupid rules too. But let's keep going.
And I think if you're willing to engage in those topics, in those debates, you're actually going to inspire more trust with young people, right? Because right now it's verboten. Right now it's off limits. Why is it off limits? That doesn't make sense. That's the only issue that's off limits. Yes. They don't like to be told that. They also don't like to be, the insinuations that they might be anti-Semitic if they're asking questions about that. What I want to get us to as a movement, and what I think, Turning Point can play a role in, is opening up that dialogue with boundaries against some of that's why there has to be a line on this stuff, that we reject Jew hatred, we reject, saying, Israel doesn't have a right to exist. But at the same time, we're, America first, right? This idea that
we're America first, right? Are we?
Nation state, we need to put the compact between a government and its people is that the nation is first. And so the U.S. government's first and foremost needs to protect the interests of the American people. Now, some people, when you say that, will say, well, that means also being an ally of Israel. Okay, but what does that mean? What does that actually look like in practice? And so those are the debates that we should be having. But what I don't want to be, communicating to the world is that you have to think like I do about this foreign policy issue to be a part of America first, to belong to the team. We can have those debates, and it has to be okay. If it's not okay, you're going to alienate the young people that Charlie worked so hard to bring into the fold.
Yeah, I'm so glad you raised that, because you talk about boundaries. Is there a plan to lay out what those? I mean, you mentioned a couple here, but is there a plan to get specific on those boundaries in terms, like for example, Tucker? Okay, he's there at AmFest, but Nick Fuentes is not going to take the stage. So I mean, what's the line? You say you've mentioned a couple. I'm just wondering if there's going to be by TPUSA maybe more of a specific boundary line, or is that hard to say?
I mean, listen.
Are we going to get like a specific handbook that tells conservatives like how they should think and feel about Israel? Dude, it's insane, dude. It is insane. And using their own logic, right, is like, well, we need to prioritize American issues. Okay. Well, wouldn't that mean like maybe prioritizing like the majority of the populace here, which would be whites and Christians, and depending on which way you wanted to break it down? Are we going to get some more specifics? Like to me, that does almost sound like he's asking for an outright, like full-blown disavowal of Nick in that moment. He's like, well, Tucker, but Nick, tell us, give us our orders, us lowly peasants. Absolute scum, dude. Absolute scum people. Just, anyway.
At the Charlie Kirk show, we're still doing the show. We talk about these issues there. The staff is watching that content. We communicate it on social media. Charlie is still the heartbeat and the spiritual center of what Turning Point is. Now Erica is kind of taking on that mantle. But this is why I say it to you. There are boundaries. I just said it, and I've said it before, and we'll say it again. I think what you see at AmFest, we never tell people what to say at AmFest. Charlie refused.
That's the point, right?
Yeah, we don't bring people to AmFest. I think there is this misconception throughout the years that we would bring people on and tell them what to say. Now Charlie might say to somebody like, "Go hard, go max, go, don't hold anything back," But he wasn't like reviewing a script and saying, "Oh, don't say that," or scratching something out.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the basic rules are respect the fact that you have kids watching, that families watch, make sure it's acceptable for all ages. And we brought you to AmFest because we believe in the message that you have. We believe in your ability to communicate something that is worthwhile, right? We don't have to agree with everything you say 100%. We certainly probably don't most of the time, actually. And so, but what the point is that we have a big, broad coalition. There's a lot of open questions, especially in the wake of Charlie's assassination. There's been lots of controversy. Well, we don't have to necessarily define what those parameters are in every issue. Maybe we're not the most...
No, listen to this. I mean, but I think the point got full and well across. And, you know, when Andrew Colvett finds himself in the same position that Megyn Kelly and Charlie Kirk were just in, as many others of these people do, who basically entire operations and organizations are propagated by Jewish donors. Or if it's not outright Jewish donors, it's those who are purely donating for, you know, a singular, knowing that that's the kind of the cause, or they're donating because they are, like what House had just said earlier, a little bit ago, sympathetic to the cause, or they are Christian Zionists, or they are adjacent in some way. But he's obviously being pressured. And this is kind of the dance that Andrew Colvet's doing here. And this shows like the dance is, there's no escaping it. You will run this dance forever. And it's all because they just want you to be intellectually honest about it. But the dance is this. The dance is that a lot of people, and we saw this, right? In like a month or two before Charlie Kirk was taken from us, what's going on? Charlie Kirk sits down with Andrew Colvett, not in a one-on-one, but they sit down because they basically call an emergency meeting with a bunch of like the youth leaders of all these different chapters around. And they're having a struggle session about Israel. Like, what should the messaging be about Israel? And it's not going anywhere because you have a rising and growing populace, especially among the youth, that don't care. There's nothing that you will be able to say. And at this point, like, they're getting mad that you have defended it this long, that now people don't even care about the substance. They're just like, just get it out of my country. And you guys have no legs to stand on either. You know, not you guys, but in terms of like the Zionists, because the heart of America is rejecting it. Heart of America is waking up to, again, some things being truthful, some things being out there and insane. But the point being is it's a combination of just waking up and realizing that you're not being represented. The people who are supposed to be doing things for you are literally not. It doesn't matter if it's Israel or anything else. Israel being, I would argue, the largest example of this and having the most influence of all of them. But the point being is we're done. This has nothing to do with America. I don't give a shit what happens to Israelis. I don't care what happens to Palestinians. Obviously, I don't wish them ill will. But if you're going to continually say that, like, we need, like, here's the thing too, is like, regardless of what, take this out to a very objective stance as well. Regardless of what anybody may think on the issue, obviously I have my own biases against it. But here's the thing. We've now reached a point where I think anybody who didn't have any kind of prior knowledge about the situation now could at least look at it and go, I don't care, dude, but whatever makes people just stop talking about Israel. Well, it's not going away until people drop their support for it. And I don't care how much Mike Huckabee wants to pony up and glaze Jonathan Pollard. I don't care how much he wants to go up there and spew heresy and this heretical idea of what it means with dispensationalism. Their ideas are losing. Their ideas lose in the free marketplace of ideas. They are terrified of people like Stonequire and Joe Webben, as much as people might have disagreements with them. On some other issues, there's no stopping it. It will continue to grow, and there's nothing they can do about it. So right now, I think if you want this to stop, you're just going to have to outright silence people. I think if the government wants to support Israel, it will have to start eliminating human beings. I don't want that to happen at all. But this idea that like you're going to win in the marketplace, you already lost in the marketplace of ideas. You lost. So can you just accept the defeat? Let go of the support? Like, dude, move to Israel at that point. Let us control our own country. Please let us determine our own future. And stop pretending you guys have no idea what's going on either. But again, it's so much of it's being just wrapped into intellectual dishonesty. So much of it, they're taking advantage of the fact that the average audience member is an idiot or retarded, or they are expecting that there are more people who are in the retarded camp than there are those with, higher than, room temperature IQ. And they can lean on it because they know what the average, education level of an American citizen is. And they can. And unfortunately, I have to agree that that is probably more truth than what I would like it to be. So, there was a couple other smaller things, like another student at the Young Americans for Liberty, or YAF, I think that's the right one. There's more. There's another guy who came out and was confronting a Zionist about, the language that's in the Talmud, why it shouldn't even be in a Christian nation, and gave a good reason for that. And he was really young. He looked like he was 18 years old. It's not stopping. It's not going anywhere. So if you want it to stop, just ban all of us. Censor literally everybody. The only way it's going anywhere. I will seriously not stop until Israel is decoupled from the United States. And I think a lot of other people feel this way. Get it out of my country. It never deserved to be here in the first place. We have no responsibility, no accountability, and no reason at all to support them. Israel's incompatible with the West, and so is Islam. And so is Islam. Now, if someone wants to put an argument together about how Israel can be our vassal state and they do our bidding, well, that's a different story. But until that is put on the table, I really don't know what to tell you. There was another crazy one. I think I'll go ahead and do this. We'll do this as one of the last ones. I would play a bit more of ADL from Jonathan Greenblatt, but I think I'm kind of done listening to people like that for today. But just know that Jonathan Greenblatt was talking about how we need to have a defense against populism in this country. No joke, Jonathan Greenblatt, I don't remember who he's sitting down with, but he's talking about, I think it was a Zoom call, but he's talking about how we need to have a strong defense against when populism can harness bad ideas. It's like, listen, dude, for one, this isn't Israel. And two, like, that's partly what the government's supposed to be. It's supposed to be of, by, and for the people. And populism being, what is populism, right? Obviously. And so to sit there and say that you need to reject ideas that fall under the populist, category, it's like, how much more un-American could you possibly be? Overtly just like, what is your value set? You don't belong here. That's not, you remember the New York video? Dude, I might have that on deck. I sent it to somebody earlier. This is what I think when I see this. Please tell me I have it in the bookmarks. Please tell me. Yeah, it's right here. Dude, this is the response.
We don't do that in America. We don't do that in America.
We don't do that here. This is a Christian nation, actually. So one more thing I will go ahead and look at here is going to be this, and it's going to be if God breaks his promise with Israel. And let me just get this chat out of here real quick, just so people can make it easier to see. This is Jack Hibbs. And this is Jack Hibbs talking, giving his opinion on what happens if God breaks his promise to Israel. And so this is just, it could probably fall under the gay of the day, but just to show you that this push from Israel between the geofencing, the Hezbollah campaigns, the advertising, the marketing, they are dumping as much money as they possibly can. I mean, as much as you can possibly put. I mean, they 20 times the Hezbollah budget. They are funneling money in an attempt to, and in my opinion, basically like harden the Christian Zionist base and demographic as much as they can, because that's going to be their number one defenders as we kind of continually move and this kind of narrative evolves when people are trying to get rid of this influence over the nation. And so just take a listen, because I don't think this kind of rhetoric is going anywhere soon.
From a theological standpoint, if we think God will break what he described as an everlasting covenant with them, how does our covenant of salvation
You don't
stand?
have one. If God breaks his covenant promise with Israel, then you now have no assurance that you'll make it to heaven as a believer. And some people have said over the years, it's quite a cute but cool response and quite accurate. Can you prove the existence of God with one word? And that person said, Israel. In fact, I made a big Jewish friend laugh, and pray for him, please. But Dennis Prager, we're very close. And I told Dennis,
my bad.
I said, listen, You should listen to what I have to say to you. And why should I listen to you? He said, why should I listen to you? I said, because I'm a Gentile.
From a theological.
And a beautiful quote from House. And that's absolutely spot on. Let me make this a bit bigger. Where did it go? And I think that's maybe the bigger point that I would bring up. One that really opened it up for me was realizing that all the church fathers actually heavily disagree with literally almost everybody in the Protestant space right now. And when you see some of what they said, I mean, like, you're basically forced with the idea that either the vast overwhelming majority of Christian fathers that preceded us died in sin, or it's the inverse, and it's all of the ones from like the 1913, the co-option of the Christian or the Christian Zionist, the hybrid subversion, perversion, dispensationalism theology. It's a hard sell, right? And that's what the sell basically is. But the reason why you don't know much about it is because it's never talked about. And this is one thing that I've always had the biggest issue with, is you're not, in most churches, in most Protestant churches, you are not, it's what I call them all the time, I call them the gospel only churches. These are churches, and I know everybody's going to know what I'm talking about. These are churches that literally will only preach from the books of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And it's not to say that there's anything wrong with that message, but it is a one-sided message. It is a message that is omitting a lot of the comprehensive and robust ideas and what it means to be Christian, the overwhelming nature of it. And a further step from there is that the history and the historical context that match places to dates, to times, to church fathers, to real people, to real events, also is generally omitted, which leads us into a position where a lot of people look and talk and think about the Bible as a book or a series of events that happened like somewhere over there, or like it happened in this place, like not as like it's actually the living word of God. And it's been a huge travesty to literally the entire, just the overall education and just Christian faith in this country and its, in its posterity. Think of the super chat, Lord of the Ring. He says, Truth in History has videos debunking Judeo-Christianity. Interesting. I'll have to look him up. Somebody else has also sent me Truth in History too before. I wonder who that was. But think of the super chat. I appreciate that, man. And that is one thing I was thinking about too the other day. I probably do need to be a bit more vocal. I kind of noticed that in my content as well. I feel like I'm kind of maybe falling a bit more into the political realm and less so losing the kind of Christian nationalist edge. And so that's something that I will be definitely roping back into a higher degree. Obviously I have the intro and stuff too, but I feel like the intro is kind of empty if I don't speak, to Christianity, and about these kind of elements, as much as I should be. At least that's the way I kind of think about it. And it's unfortunate, man. But the reality is they already lost if you look at X, if you look at anywhere that you may even deem like a halfway kind of example or a metric as a free speech platform, or somewhere where there is ideas allowed to at least be halfway challenged without being annihilated instantly, what more can you say? They have already lost. And now we're just kind of watching this kind of sad power struggle as they flail and convulse, because they do still have money coming in. But the reality is that they've lost the people's consent. There's less people showing up with their hands raised. Well, actually, no, there's people coming with their hands raised, but they're questions. They're questions, and they're asking, why am I just now learning about what it says about Jesus Christ in the Talmud? Well, how did I get to 27 years old and I never heard about this before? But I could cite like 10 different verses that you talk about Islam all the time. How could you not talk about them co-equally as enemies? Does it not say here that any god before me is an idol? Why are we making exceptions for Judaism again? Why are we omitting the vast majority of all church fathers that came before us? Why did I personally, as a Christian, go to church day in and day out, but Wednesday, Sunday school, Sunday service, Wednesday church nights, other differing nights, my entire life. And I didn't know until I saw an X post that Martin Luther wrote a book called The Jews and Their Lies. someone's got some explaining to do here about how I made it this far and being that involved in the church and in Christianity, and all that just was nowhere. That was nowhere to be found. There's no mention of this. It's a bit odd, isn't it? It's to quote Candace Owens, it's a bit weird. and I can't help but think about it all the time. And, you know, obviously with 9/11 being a bit more political, but as well, I mean, even the Christian opposition to Islam and Muslims is so much more outspoken than anything else. And the reality is there's not too many Muslims near positions of power right now, but there are a lot of Jews. So what really is the issue in America? So with that though, I appreciate you guys. Appreciate you guys greatly. Christ is King, as always. Before I do sign off, I want to let people know you can find me on Nav Creators tomorrow on the Saturday stream. That will be from 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. and I'll be with Josh Vandernord. I would also suggest people, I do believe they're having I don't know if they call it an emergency stream, but I do believe that also should do a video on it. I probably will actually. I want to get more into maybe just general commentary videos too. I would point you to Zeb Boykin and Josh. I don't know if they're going to have it on NAV or if it'll be on Zeb's channel, but I think they are going to be doing a channel, probably going back into the Charlie Kirk, Candace, Ian space as well. I could be wrong about that, but pay attention to them if Zeb's still in here. So go check them out. It's probably going to be happening around like 8 or 9. I won't be there, unfortunately. I'm getting ragged by my family. No, just kidding. Just kidding. I just got some stuff going on. And then additionally to that, obviously the Groper Report, that's on Saturday. That'll be with me and Josh. We'll be covering the litany of things that happened this week. It'll be another big week. Piers Morgan, Richard Spencer. So I have some shows I need to catch up on and watch as well too. And then on Sunday, the Founders Show. I also may have something going on Sunday. So I don't know if I will be there on Sunday. But as of now, I should be. I don't know yet. We'll see when we get there. Because there might be something I got to take care of on Sunday, just all personal stuff. And then my birthday's coming up next week too. And I don't know if I'll take any kind of break at all during the Christmas period. Just because I don't work like that. Obviously I'll take time off with the family and stuff, but just be a couple of days. I'm going to take over when everyone else has their Christmas break. They're going to come back and be like, whoa, how did Atlas get 100K subs? Like, yeah, I was the only real left. With that, what can I say, man? I'm recovering, Wigger. Recovering, dude. But with that, Christ is King. Seek first the kingdom of God. I do hope your guys' journey and relationship with Jesus Christ is going as good as it can be. I will always add to, I know it is a struggle at times. I'm going through it right now to find a church to go to find a strong Christian community and family to be a part of. I would always say, if you're struggling to find one, definitely at least try to attach yourself to the digital world or a digital space, whether it's Joel Webbin, whether it's Stone Choir. But I am rooting for you guys, and I really hope that we can get our country back. And with that, deport Cash Patel, ban and Pam Bondi from public life, and any woman over 100 pounds never to leave the kitchen again. And I think that's it. I will see you guys over the weekend. And you guys have a good rest of your day. Take care, everybody.
Get up and get out. Get out. Get out.
I have a question for you.
Say Christ is Lord. Say Christ is Lord. Say it. You say Christ is Lord.